is rooted in this law, in this United States law, all of the issues that we've seen that obtains to oppressed people. It was here that it was legal to put Asian people into internment camps. But they don't teach us about that in school. They'll teach us about the Holocaust, but they won't teach us about the genocides here that take place on the streets, that took place in Breonna Taylor's group, that took place on George Floyd's neck. All of these issues are intertwined in the oppressive systems here in the United States, and we are here to call that out as law students and as advocates. We are here to end white supremacy. Thank you.
Everyone, my name is Dara Shed. I'm the president of the Asian Pacific American Law Students Association. Thank you all for being here today. Your presence here means a lot. Your presence here is a statement. Your presence here is a purpose. Our purpose here is to be heard. We are tired of being dismissed. We are tired of being erased. We are tired of being invisible. We have a story, we have a narrative, and it needs to be heard, seen, and felt. And we understand to do that, we need to do it together. We don't look to each other to find our differences. We look to each other to find our similarities, to find our common ground as human beings. We have been divided for a long time, because divided we are weaker, and divided we are easier to conquer. But today we are not here to be conquered. Today we are here to stand together. We are here to be seen, to be heard, and to be felt. Thank you.
Hey, hey, ho, ho! Racism has got to go! Hey, hey, ho, ho! Hey, hey, ho, ho! Racism has got to go! Hey, hey, ho, ho! 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 I want to thank Dasha and Aisha so much from UDC Law School for joining us today. It's so important that we talk seriously about what we mean when we say solidarity. See, because when we talk about solidarity, you know, it's become almost like a buzzword. And we think that solidarity is just a, you know, a kumbaya, feel-good thing. Or that it's a purely moralistic thing. Now, obviously, when we see people attacked, we should have moral outrage. But when I'm out here and I say that I'm in solidarity with you, I'm not doing you a favor. I'm not doing it because I think I owe you something or because it's transactional. I hope you'll do something for me further down the line. When I say I'm in solidarity with you, I understand how my own oppression is connected to yours, and I know that I can never be free as long as you are oppressed. This is what we mean when we say solidarity. We are all impacted by these systems of white supremacy, of imperialism, both de jure and de facto, both domestically and internationally. And so I want you to help me welcome our next speaker, a grassroots activist from the area, Leo Nguyen. Welcome Leo as he comes.
Thank you so much, thank you so much. First of all, can I get a cheer for every organizer here, please? And can I get a cheer for all of y'all, please? My name is Leo Nguyen. I'm one of the organizers of last week's DC rally for collective safety. I see some familiar faces here. I see some new faces here, and that is good. And if you're tired, take a break, because we can't afford to let this fire burn down. First of all, I'm glad that we have this conversation. Let's talk about China bashing. I want to call out this lazy logic, this hateful rhetoric that somehow China is responsible for the failures of containing the virus of the United States.
Talk about that.
Yet there are members in our Asian community, especially in the Vietnamese diaspora community that I know very well, that fell for this hateful rhetoric that China is responsible for the virus. They actually enjoy calling it the coronavirus, China virus. And then they're surprised that Asians are being attacked. These people are shooting themselves in the foot and then asking why they're bleeding. Let's stop now. Keep our community members in check. And you know, don't get me wrong, just like any government, we can be critical of the Chinese Communist Party, but not the China people, and with the people of China, and not the Chinese Americans. Just like the U.S. did in the World War II with the Japanese American, in hard times like this, we must have the clarity of mind to tell the party, the people, and the country. We need to do that. Thank you. And then let's talk about action. Let's talk about action, because what can we do? And I'm going to ask you these questions, and I hope I hear the right answer. First of all, I'm going to start easy. Can you support your local Asian-owned business? Can you do that? And second, if possible, can you help donate to the organization helping AIPI community and the victims of the shooting at Atlanta families from? Can you do that if possible? Third, most states in the U.S. doesn't have a guideline for reporting a hate crime, and usually it falls to the police to determine if it's a hate crime or not. And we all know what Officer Jay Becker down in Atlanta thinks. So can you advocate in your own state to have a streamlined way to report hate crimes independently from the police? Can you do that? Fourth, can you advocate for ethnic programs in your school, in your education institution, because these programs have been proven to promote racial empathy and solidarity? Can you be an advocate for education, please? Can you do that? And lastly, there are two bills in Congress right now, the No Hate Act and the COVID-19 Hate Crime Act. I want you to call your representative, but I also want you to call your parents in Texas, your cousins in California, your friends in New York, and everybody you know around the country, and ask them to ask their rep what they're doing on it, and if their reps don't support it, they know what to do in 2022. Can you keep our Congress in check, please? Can you do that? And lastly, I want to close with this. In Vietnamese folklore, there's a story about a very familiar object in our community, chopsticks. It's very easy to break one chopsticks, but we have a band of chopsticks together. How can we break them? And the beauty of this here is no matter of the color of the chopstick, the material of the chopstick, the length of the chopsticks, when they band together, they are unbreakable. Therefore, not only the AAPI community need to stay together, we need to acknowledge that anti-blackness runs deep in our community, and because we see black folks through a lens of race, we can be pissed if other people see us through a lens of race. So we must stand in solidarity with our siblings of color and work towards black liberation and liberation for all people while censoring black folks and indigenous folks. And any struggle of any person of color is a struggle for all people of color. We can be safe until all of us are safe, our collective strength, and embracing intersectionality is the key to overcome the common enemy of violence, white supremacy, and racism. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Leo. Give Leo a round of applause. Racists say get back, we say fight back. 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 You know, I'm glad that Leo made those comments because I think we should take a look at, well, how has the American political establishment responded to this act of terror? Because there has been an incredible uptake of anti-Asian hate crimes in the last year or so. What has the Biden administration done? What have we seen from the Democrats? Well, we got some platitudes, you know, thoughts and prayers type stuff. Y'all probably saw a little while ago, the White House put out a memorandum about racism against Asian folks and the stuff they were talking about doing, but a lot of it was just, you know, giving more money to the cops. Same old thing that Biden always does. Nothing that really addresses the problem at the root. And here's the real devious part. And this is why we have to be aware about imperialism. Because what Biden and the Democrats are trying to do is lay this whole issue at the feet of Donald Trump and the Republicans. Now, it is absolutely true that Donald Trump propagated and stoked this wave of racist attacks against Asian folks because of the racist way that he talked about the coronavirus in relation to China. And all of that has to do with the U.S. engaged in this new Cold War against China. So it's not just the U.S. government, it is these corporate-owned media outlets that are pushing this as well. You see it all the time, right? And so we see that if what we want is a real end to this, then we won't have any help coming from the Democratic Party. We're not even under any delusion that the Republicans are going to be of any help because they're an openly racist party. But Joe Biden is keeping the same policies towards Asian countries, towards China, towards North Korea and that whole region that Donald Trump did. Because regardless of Democrats and Republicans acting like they're mortal enemies, when it comes to the endless war machine, when it comes to trying to spread the U.S. empire, to have complete control over the people, lands, and resources of this earth, they are in lockstep. And so you and I must be the real resistance against this. And so as we continue our program today, I want you to help me welcome Zilla from the DC Poor People's Campaign. Give Zilla a round of applause as they come.
Hello, everybody. Hello. I just want to say, let's look around here, right? So, do we have our black siblings here, right? I can't hear you. Do we have our white siblings here, right? Our Asian American community, our Latinx community. I still can't hear you. Because what my good, what the guy who spoke before me, y'all, the divide and conquer is real and it's killing us, right? That's why we're here today. It's like that quote says, when they came for one group, who spoke up for them? And this is where we are now. When they came for the indigenous community, who spoke up? No one. When they came for the black community, who spoke up? No one. Now they're coming for our Asian siblings and people are surprised. They're like, is this even a hate crime? What do you think?
It's a hate crime!
It's a hate crime, right? So I was the DC Ford People's Campaign and National Call for More Revival. And right now we are at a moral crossroads in this country. If we do not fix it, we are either going to sink together or swim together. And at this point, the way that we are continuing to the fact is that, I'm sorry y'all, hold on.
Take your time. Take your time.
Alright. Because we are at a point where if we don't come together, it's a problem. There's 140 million low-income people in this country. Not all of them are black, but that is the narrative we're given. Inner city people are the problem. All of that jazz, right? But in reality, 140 million people, that's a lot of people. And that is before the pandemic, right? So we also have about 50 million people slated to get evicted. Yet again, not all black people. And I say this to say, we need to stand up together. If our Asian community, they're having a problem with them, then we have a problem, okay? We all need to get together and stop with this, who's closer to whiteness, who's closer to the Washington elite with all honesty. Because in reality, and especially now, we got people of color in office in high places, right? Like, I'm going to give my girl some property, I'm in the same sorority, all right? She's a great person. However, she still does not have the best interest for the people. And we, as the people, need to remember, like the preamble of the Constitution says, we, the people. And people are like, Zilla, why are you quoting the Constitution? All those people are dead, right? So we rewrite history. That's one thing that the Ford People's Campaign we talk about is changing the narrative. And the narrative has been written by people who have not stood for the people. So it's now for the people to start writing our own narrative about where. I'm sorry, y'all. That's mad today. It's like, sorry. Now we need to start taking our own narrative and understanding where we need to go and where we need to be. Because the fact is that, look at all the women who were killed. Women are not safe in this world or around the world. We need to start uplifting our women, our children, everything, our families. Because we're all born people in this world, but then this world divides us. And that's what we need to remember. So I say all that to say is look at your neighbor in the safest way and just say we're walking together in this. We're not going to let down, and we are going to keep it moving, and we're going to walk together and learn together and fight together until we can't do it no more. Because what other groups are left? You know, before no one takes for anyone. So thank y'all. Have a good night.
Thank you, Zilla, from the DC Ford People's Campaign. When Asian folks are under attack, what do we do? When Asian folks are under attack, what do we do? When Asian folks are under attack, what do we do? When Asian folks are under attack, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? I said, what do we do? When Asian folks are under attack, what do we do? When Asian folks are under attack, what do we do? When Asian folks are under attack, what do we do? When Asian folks are under attack, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? I said, what do we do? You know, it's so important that Zilla was coming to us from the DC Poor People's Campaign and talking about the depth of poverty here in the United States, the hunger, the homelessness that has only been exacerbated by the coronavirus pandemic. What is the connection between that and this terror attack, this act of racist, misogynist violence that we're talking about? It is capitalism. It's about this exploitative, blood-sucking, soul-breaking system that does all it can to crush humanity. This is the same government that passed a $740 billion defense bill. And I put defense in quotes because you and I aren't made any safer by that defense bill. The United States government has almost 1,000 military bases and installments across this planet. And no one out here is made any safer because of it. The only thing that's made safer by those bases in that budget is the profits of the war profiteers and the corporations. But listen, the man who was the head of the Pentagon right now, Lloyd Austin, you want to know what he was doing before he was the head of the Defense Department? He sat on the board of Raytheon, a defense contractor. So you can't be a part of the U.S. government if you don't have this warlike orientation. And so that same government that would spend all that money only wants to throw you a little $1,400 to call it a stimulus. We're here in DC, one of the most expensive places to live in this country. $1,400 don't get that far. And Biden lied about that. He said we get $2,000. But yet, we're getting this other little bit. Every person in this country should get thousands of dollars every month until this pandemic is over. And it's not that this country can't do it. They're choosing not to. That's how we have to make this change. And so the connection is, this racist violence is connected to the violence that this country does all over the world. This government and the media tells you that this country or that country's government is your enemy. Is Xi Jinping the reason we don't have a living wage in this country? Is Nicolas Maduro the reason we don't have Medicare for all? Is Kim Jong-un the reason why racist police terror continues to happen here in the U.S.? No. Our enemy in this country is the government that is a government of the wealthy and for the wealthy. That's why we have to be the resistance. And so now, it is my pleasure to bring up someone that I've been able to organize with for a long time here in DC around the issue of racist police terror. So I want you to help join me in welcoming Zoila Hinson from Stop Police Terror Project DC. Welcome Zoila as she comes.
Hey y'all. First of all, yell at me if you can't hear me. I can't project as well as Sean can. First of all, thank you so much for allowing us to be here today with all of you to stand against anti-Asian racism and violence. I feel privileged to be here with all of you today. One thing that horrified me and shocked me, but did not surprise me about the state response to this violence last week is how it's been suffused from the very first moment with white supremacy. In the way that the police completely adopted the murderer's version of events and ignored the racism, xenophobia, and misogyny that motivated his murders, in the way that they excused it as a bad day, and the fact that the police kept in making these statements is racist against Asian people, and the way that they treated the victims and their families. One victim, Delana Ashley Young, her husband was detained for 4 hours as a suspect after her murder. And they failed to tell the children of one of the other victims, Hyun Jung Grant, that she had died. They heard from a coworker. That's horrifying. And what this tells us is something that we already know, which is that white supremacy and racism are a part of this government, are a part of our police system, and always have been. And that's why the state response has been so wrong. We keep hearing, we're going to put more cops in Asian communities now. That's how we're going to keep Asian communities safe with police officers. But in DC, America's most over-policed city, with more police here per capita than any other city in the country, we know police don't keep us safe, right? The police didn't stop the murders last week. They didn't stop more than 100 540 hate incidents here in the DMV in the past year alone, and they historically haven't stopped violence against Asian communities, from the Japanese internment, which was mentioned earlier, to the Chinese massacre in 1871 in LA, America's largest lynching ever. And they're not going to keep Asian communities or any other community safe here in DC. So I want to echo something I've heard from a lot of other people, which is that call for solidarity, not just in words, but in actions. We see that so much in DC already, but like, let's step it up another level, right? That's coming to events like this, it's being in the streets, it's building transformative justice tools and mutual aid networks, it's changing policy, and it's working together in the long term. So I know a lot of you guys are already involved with different organizations, and if you're not, if this is the thing that is moving you, please, please, please join an organization, get involved. There are so many different groups working together here in DC, and please come and join us. We're excited for that. We know that the only way we can protect each other, can keep ourselves safe, and can keep all our communities safe, is by working together. So we keep us safe. Please, please get involved.
Thank you, Zoila. The people united will never be defeated. The people united. I said the people united will never be defeated. The people united. Let me hear you. The people united. The people united. I said the people united. The people united. You know, when we talk about anti-Asian violence, we have to talk about how the United States has a deep history of anti-Asian violence at the institutional level, not for decades, for centuries. We can look at the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. We can talk about the whole era of what they called the Yellow Peril, a whole racist campaign where Chinese and Asian immigrants were framed or caricatured as an invading horde here to take jobs and to disrupt American culture. Does that sound familiar? We hear these racist tropes about immigrants over and over and over again. We can look at the period of the Spanish-American War, where the United States killed at least 1 million Filipino people. Some say as many as 3 million. And even to this very day, right now, at this moment, as we speak, the United States government is supporting the brutal, repressive government of Rodrigo Duterte in the Philippines. So, anti-Asian violence is not some isolated incident down in Georgia. No. Anti-Asian violence is an integral part of the history of white supremacy here in the United States. And so with that, I want you all to help me welcome Jay from Anak Bayan, DC. Welcome Jay from Anak Bayan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kumusta kayong lahat? My name is Jay, and I'm with Anak Bayan DC. Anak Bayan DC is a militant, youth-led mass organization that fights for national democracy with a socialist perspective in the Philippines. Yong A.U. Soon Cha Kim, Soon Chung Park, Hyun Jung Grant, Dao Yo Feng, Zhao Ji Tan. These are the names of the women that fell victim to white supremacist violence last week in Atlanta. They were working women who had families, friends, as well as their own goals and aspirations, just like you and I. In an instant, these women were taken away from all that. So let's take a brief moment of silence to commemorate their lives. Today, we are here to collectively demand an end to anti-Asian violence and violence against working women. Most importantly, we are here to stand in solidarity with those who are impacted by white supremacy and violence. Because only in a violent and cruel society are tragedies like what happened in Atlanta normalized. From last year up until now, there have been over 3,800 hate crimes against Asian Americans. We must recognize that this spike of violence is not new to the Asian community. It goes way, way before the pandemic. In fact, let's concretely define what violence is. We can't address violence against the Asian American community without addressing the root cause of this violence: U.S. imperialism. From Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Korea, the Philippines, and so on, millions of our Asian siblings have been murdered, tortured, and imprisoned. Entire communities have been bombed and destroyed at the hands of the U.S. government and the military. Remember that this is also the same violence that our black, brown, indigenous, and Latinx siblings have faced and even still face today through state forces like the police and ICE. A lot of us are here in the U.S. in the first place because of its imperialist violence through the military, supporting fascist leaders, plundering our home country's natural resources, which continue to torment our nations even today. This violence displaces our families and loved ones, forcing them to migrate abroad by the thousands every day to escape poverty and search for better opportunities. For what? Only for them to be met with racialized threats and attacks? For them to be murdered? Violence is leaving workers like the 6 slain women in Atlanta in vulnerable conditions. Violence is leaving our Filipino nurses extremely vulnerable at the hands of this pandemic, with them making 4% of nurses here and 30% of nurse deaths from COVID. Violence is forced assimilation, causing us to lose touch of our own cultures, languages, and even robbing us of our own identities. Violence is environmental destruction, allowing poor countries and marginalized communities to bear the brunt of this climate crisis. Violence is mass deportations, which disproportionately target poor and working class people. Violence is U.S. military presence and bases in countries like the Philippines under the guise of assistance and aid. This aid instead funds the state-sponsored violence that is being used to kill and suppress our own people back home who organize for genuine democracy and peace. Violence is capitalism that prioritizes profit over people, leaving working folks and their families without food on the table, without adequate housing, and without proper health care. We must recognize that white supremacy, misogyny, xenophobia, classism, and sexism are all tools that U.S. imperialism uses to divide our communities, because it knows that when we stand together, it is powerless and it is weak. Although it's important to call out these acts of violence and hate, it's even more important to get involved and to get organized within our own communities while standing in solidarity with other struggles. In the end, fighting against racism requires us to be anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist. Because assimilation will not save us. It never has and it never will. It is only liberation through building collective power that we will see an end to white supremacist violence and an end to imperialism. The people united! The people united! The people united! The people united! Thank you all.
All right, thank you, Jay. Thank you, Anak Bayan, DC. Give him a round of applause. All right, how y'all feeling? All right. Well, again, my name is Sean Blackman. I'm here with the Answer Coalition. That means act now to stop war and end racism. It's a beautiful day to struggle, and I'm glad about it. The sun is shining on this movement. The sun is shining on the unity that we're showing here today. And it is the light of our solidarity that will pierce the bitter darkness of the oppression that surrounds us. This is the only way we can hope to win. Racists say, get back, we say. 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 All right, make some noise. And now, as we continue our program, I want you all to join me in welcoming Echo from Butterflies for Hope. Give Echo an applause as they come. That's right.
Thank you, Answer Coalition, for hosting this rally today. I was a teenager when I was joining a lot of different anti-war protests in DC with Answer Coalition and people like you guys, and maybe your parents. Today I'm here because we wanted to give solidarity. We had our own, I live in Fairfax, Virginia, and we had our own rally in front of a Comfort Woman statue in Annandale, Virginia on Monday. It was a candlelight vigil. We had a lot of community members who wanted to come together, who wanted to share and mourn together and also listen to each other and speak out. Don't stop being the model Asian, model minority. We wanted to speak out. We wanted a place to come together. And when I saw this post that you're having this rally together, we thought we must come out. This is a poster that I made, that I personally made, because I involved not only, I'm involved with the Comfort Woman issue, which is sexual slavery by the Japanese military during World War II. When I saw the news articles about the spot shooting, I immediately connected. It's Asian women, the fetishization of Asian women that is part of this crime. It's the gun violence that's part of this crime. But all these images of Asian women in the spa and the women in the sex working industry, it's all connected to the US troops wherever they are in Asia country, especially in Korea, which has the biggest US base in South Korea. They so call it alliance, South Korea-US alliance, spending our tax money, US, when we want to end the 70-year-old war, they want to continue their presence in South Korea using our tax money, using my cousins who live in South Korea, their tax money to keep the US bases there and to continue the ladies, the sexualization of ladies, slavery, or the comfort woman, using our Asian ladies as comfort women. So thank you for having this rally. Let's continue to stay in solidarity. The MC mentioned earlier, let's not burn out, continue to keep the flame, and continue to stand up together. I wanted to end with a chant. Asian women are not white men's comfort women. Asian women are not white men's comfort women. Sorry, that wasn't a good chant. Let me do another chant. Up with liberation, down with Asian hate. 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 Thank you.
All right, make some noise. You know, I'm so glad that Echo raised this concept of the model minority that have been forced on the Asian American Pacific Islander people in this country. And I immediately thought about David Dow. Y'all remember David Dow? Back in 2017, this was a Vietnamese American doctor who was forcibly removed from an airplane because he refused to give up his seat. Now, what could be more respectable? What could be more model than a doctor? But you see, this racist country doesn't care about how respectable you are. It doesn't care about your degrees. It doesn't care about your accomplishments. It doesn't care if you're a quote-unquote good citizen. There was a time when Chinese folks in this country had to carry papers just to prove they were citizens. And there were even situations where if you were found to be without these papers, you could go to court and have to have a judge sign off and say, this person is in the country lawfully. Imagine having to carry documentation that you are lawfully in a country that you were born in. That's the depth of racism that exists in this country, both historically and to this very day. We cannot separate that historic oppression with the racist vigilantism that we saw down in Georgia. And with that, I'm very excited to bring up a dynamic young organizer based here in DC. Please join me in welcoming Hadra from Students Against Imperialism. Hadra from Students Against Imperialism.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everybody, for being out here today. So, like Sean said, my name is Hodge. I'm a student at the George Washington University, and I'm an organizer in a student organization called Students Against Imperialism. So, as a student of history, as a student of American foreign policy, you become very aware of the fact that anti-Asian violence is quite literally American foreign policy. For decades in the 1900s and even before that, American foreign policy has necessitated the violence, the destruction, and the death of Asian people in the countries they live in. From the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, to the anti-communist terror, under that guise, millions of Cambodians, millions of people in Laos were murdered. Children, families, and their crime was nothing other than being citizens of these countries. In Vietnam, you had thousands of bombs dropped, chemical weapons, you had the use of Agent Orange. To this very day, there are children being born with deformities, entire populations being impacted, decades onward, because of the use of Agent Orange by the US military. In Laos and Cambodia, they call it death from beneath. Unexploded landmines are to this very day killing citizens in these countries. So when we talk about anti-Asian violence, and we hear people from the Democratic Party talking about their support, their thoughts and prayers, we have to understand that they still stand for American foreign policy. American imperialism is their prerogative. So it means nothing when they say stop Asian hate. How do you stop Asian hate? By supporting, sanctions against North Korea. I mean, consistently in the media, we are told to demonize North Korea, to be wary of them, that, they are a threat to us. America has nearly 1,000 military bases across the world. The rest of the countries have some 30 combined. Please tell me how any other country in the world is a threat and not America. The American military... The American military is a global parasite, is a global occupier, and it is objectively a terrorist organization. Ask the people, to the people of the Middle East, ask the people of Iraq, ask the people in Vietnam, ask the people of Korea. I mean, can we blame the Koreans for being wary of America, specifically the American military, when under the Korean War, the United States killed nearly up to a quarter of their population. But in the media we're told, North Korea is going to strike us, North Korea has nuclear weapons, we need to be afraid. We need to be aware, we need to be critical, and we need to study American history and understand that this is how they manufacture consent for us to go to war on our dimes and kill foreign people in our names. So we need to be cognizant of this. We need to let history be a lesson, and we need to form lasting solidarity. We need to reject the othering of foreign populations, of the Chinese, of the Koreans, and really understand that war hurts us all. Imperialism is a global threat, it's a global enemy. So with that, I want to thank everybody for being here. Continue to tap into the anti-war movement in your area, Answer Coalition, student organizations on your campuses if you're a student, and shameless plug, follow Students Against Imperialism on Instagram at GWUSAI. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Hydra. Congress says more war, we say no more. 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 I want to thank Hydra from Students Against Imperialism for speaking to us. And you know, don't you ever let anyone tell you that the young people, this generation, is lazy or not involved or uninterested in what's happening in the world around them. This is a dynamic generation. This is a brilliant generation. This is a generation that has had a political development unlike anything we've seen. I've seen young people on TikTok that know more about what's happening than people 20, 30, 40 years older than them. So believe you me, the young folks are all right. And so, we've talked a lot today, and rightfully so, about imperialism and about the inherent racism in imperialism. But there's also the system of capitalism that is at the root of all of this. Malcolm X once said, you can't have capitalism without white supremacy. He said, you show me a capitalist, I'll show you a bloodsucker. And so this is the reality, both historically and today. And to connect this with the issues we've been discussing, I want you to help me, join me in welcoming Katie from the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Give Katie a round of applause as she comes.
Hi everyone, how y'all doing? I'm Katie. I'm an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation, or PSL. And I'm here today because an injury to one is an injury to all. That's why we're all here. We need solidarity. We need to join together to fight this racism. So I thank you all for coming out. This is an amazing crowd. And I'm just really happy that y'all are here. I also want to talk about the origin of racism in this country and some of the things building on what Hadra and other speakers have said. The U.S. likes to say that we're this amazing democracy, right? That's our legacy. But it's really a legacy of genocide and kidnapping and violence. And that legacy is still well alive today. So this idea that we're this amazing country, we have to look all the way back and how everything that happened 400 years ago is still happening today. And it's why I'm here as a socialist, because the system that got us here, this capitalist, racist, genocidal, violent system, is something that we need to work together to fight against. So, we're talking, can the capitalism without capitalism, can the capitalism without racism? Well, what do we have instead? So, as a socialist, that's why I think it's important to be here today, because we spent liberation? So, you know, when we talk about like ending the military-industrial complex and ending imperialism, we have to talk about what we're fighting for. And what we're fighting for is the resources put towards people and people's needs. So again, I want to thank y'all for coming out. Again, I'm Katie with the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and I'll turn it back to Sean.
Thank you so much, Katie. The people united will never be defeated. The people. I said the people united will never be defeated. The people united. I said the people united. The people united. I said the people united. I said the people united. It is so very important that we emphasize the role of capitalism when we talk about anti-Asian violence, when we talk about white supremacy, when we talk about imperialism. We have to be clear that the solutions to all of these issues will not be found under the capitalist system, because the system is the problem. It was genocide and slavery that laid the groundwork for capitalism in the United States. And it was that same system that brought generation after generation of Asian folks and other people from around the world to exploit their labor. And why? All so that a small group of people who hoard the wealth that you and I create when we give our labor. You ever just go home after work and sit down on the bed and say, man, they don't pay me enough for everything that I do. That's because they don't. The wealth that we create is stolen from us. And the government that we have in this country is a government of and for the wealthy. And so, as the masses of poor and working and oppressed people in this country, we don't have billions and trillions of dollars. We don't control the political institutions in this country or anything like that. We don't control these major corporate-owned media platforms. But what we have is the numbers. There are way more of us than there are of them. That's why unity is so important. So when you and I get together and have a program that is really fighting for the needs of all the peoples of this country and this world, that is when we will see a new change. That is when we will see a new society. That is when we will see a new system. And don't you ever let anyone tell you that having a new society and a new system is impossible. The abolition of slavery seemed impossible until it happened. Women's suffrage seemed impossible until it happened. Black folks getting the right to vote and getting that legislation seemed impossible until it happened. A 40-hour work week, unemployment insurance. You show me any victory that people's movements have made in this country, I will show you something that folks said was impossible until it was made possible. That's what you and I have to do. We have to make the impossible possible. And we can absolutely do it. That's right. And so, my friends, as we begin to wrap up here today, we're going to bring up one last speaker. I want you to join me in welcoming Brian Becker, the National Director of the Answer Coalition. Welcome Brian Becker as he comes.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you to everyone who's come out today. There are 60 cities right now that are doing exactly what we're doing. Some of them are small towns, some of them are medium-sized towns. LA, San Francisco, big crowds right now out in the streets. But 60 cities on the same day, united, standing together with the Asian American community and with all communities who suffer from racist violence, from police terror, from the problems imposed by this system. We're standing together, 60 cities together today. And you know, when you go home, if you watch TV, it's pretty likely that it won't be on CBS or ABC or NBC or even the Washington Post. Maybe we'll get some coverage. But there's a reason that the corporate-owned, capitalist-owned media won't report stories like this. And the main reason is that stories like this become contagious. Because when some people see other people standing up and fighting and uniting, they want to do the same thing. When you see that when Asian people are being killed, as happened in Atlanta, and the people who come out are not only the Asian community, but the black, the Latino, the white, the indigenous, the Arab American community, that's a powerful message. That's a very strong message. That's what we saw with the nationwide uprising against racism after that disgusting, nonchalant murder of George Floyd on May 25th in Minneapolis. That cop, Derek Chauvin, just kneeling on his neck and killing him. And the thing about it is, that was not unusual. Derek Chauvin and tens of thousands of police officers act like that every day. And it's not even that unusual now that it's caught on video. What was unusual about George Floyd in Minneapolis is that the people in Minneapolis went into rebellion. They not only demonstrated, they stayed in the streets. And when they stayed in the streets, people all over the country joined them. And this was the biggest mass movement in American history on short notice. 35 million people came out, half of them who had never been to a demonstration before. It's contagious when people stand up. And remember what Donald Trump did when he ordered the police and the National Guard and the Secret Service and the Park Police to carry out that violent attack right here on H Street on the north side of Lafayette so he could walk across Lafayette Park and stand there with a Bible. He carried out a violent assault against peaceful protesters so he could have his goddamn picture taken. And you know, they thought, Trump thought, the Republicans thought, the cops thought, well, these people are going to get the message that we're going to use unrestrained violence even against peaceful protesters, and they're not going to come back into the streets. But instead, when you look at what happened the day after Donald Trump carried out that photo op in Lafayette Park, that was June 1st. On June 2nd, millions of people came into the streets. Millions of people stood up. Sometimes people see police repression and they run, and that's understandable. But sometimes people see police repression and they don't run, they stand and they say, we're not going to move, and we demand justice. And that's what we witnessed this last summer. You know, every movement goes up and then it goes down a little bit and then it goes up again. It's not just a straight line. The issue for us, for people of conscience, is not just to be there when the thing is going up, when everybody is in the streets all at once. What do we do all of those other days? How do we build this movement? How do we make it strong? How do we sustain it? If you go back and look at the history of the anti-war movement or the civil rights movement, read the story about Rosa Parks. Everybody knows she refused to give her seat to a white man in 1955, but Rosa Parks had been doing that every day for years and years. And nobody ignited a mass movement, but she kept at it. She didn't stop. Sometimes she was meeting with people in the basement of a church, and it would be the same 3 or 4 people, and they'd say, is this ever going to make a difference? And then at some point, it really made a difference. And as Sean said, the reason the Voting Rights Act was passed was not because of Congress. They were the same racist Dixiecrats who had been in office sustaining apartheid. The reason we got Medicare, the reason we have unemployment insurance, the reason we have anything in this country is when people stood up and fought back and built a grassroots movement, and that's what we're doing. We're building that kind of movement. So I invite you, I'm with the Answer Coalition, there are other organizations here. The point of our demonstration today and in 60 cities is to show solidarity, but more important than anything, it's to keep moving, keep growing, keep building, keep organizing, keep mobilizing, because that's how change happens. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters. Let's keep it going.
Thank you, Brian. When Asian laws are under attack, what do we do? When Asian folks are under attack, what do we do? When Asian folks are under attack, what do we do? When Asian folks are under attack, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? I said, what do we do? When Asian lives are under attack, what do we do? When Asian folks are under attack, what do we do? When Asian lives are under attack, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? I said, what do we do?
You know, my friends, I was there on June 1st when federal troops cleared people in front of what is now Black Lives Matter Plaza so Donald Trump could take that bizarre photo walk that Brian was describing. And what they did that day is something that DC police, federal troops, and other policing agencies did all summer in response to the rebellion against racism that raged in the streets of DC and in this country after the racist police killing George Floyd. They used stun grenades, they used tear gas, they used rubber bullets. I mean, it was an onslaught. And that wasn't the first day. They did that all summer. Ryan talked about the assault on Swan Street where people were kettled by DC police who were not under the authority of Donald Trump. They were under the authority of Muriel Bowser, a so-called progressive. And let's talk about Muriel Bowser for a second. This is a lady who put Black Lives Matter on a street. But who did she support in the presidential race? Mike Bloomberg, Mr. Stop and Frisk himself, a man who has come to embody racist policing. And not only that, Muriel Bowser's whole administration as mayor has been as a class enemy to the black folks in this city. Why do I say that? Because she continues to facilitate gentrification and displacement. She's in cahoots with a lot of these wealthy developers. Every year she gives some pretty speech about affordable housing and all of that, but she does everything in her power to destroy it. So that was a great, little PR move. She made the podcast rounds. I think she went on some show with Lil Wayne or something. Did wonders for her profile. Meanwhile, you and I that live here know the truth. And Bowser also wanted to give these police, I think it was $400 million for overtime for the work they did, quote unquote work, at these protests. And she pulled this from health, from health programs and employment programs in the midst of a pandemic. Do you know that in DC, according to NPR, black people in DC are 5.9 times more likely to die from the coronavirus than their white counterparts? But she wants to defund the people's needs to reward the police for their organized thuggery. And so whether we're talking about DC, whether we're talking about Atlanta, whether we're talking about the United States, or whether we're talking about any issue on this earth where it's connected, we're dealing with these issues of capitalism and imperialism. And even the people who are in place to protect us are doing everything that they can to crush us. So that is why we cannot let today be a one-off. We have to continue to be in communication with each other, to be in communion with each other, to organize with each other. Because as long as we are organized, as long as we resist, we will never be defeated. So we want you to be a part of this broad movement that we need across lines of division. We want you to be a part of the Answer Coalition, or the Party for Socialism and Liberation, or all these other great groups that we saw today. Because you might be bad, but you can't do much by yourself. We have to do this together. So my name is Sean Black with the Answer Coalition. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Peace if you're willing to fight for it, and let your motto be resistance. Thank you.
I'll do a wrap up on my own. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick little wrap up here. I wanted to describe that this is DC's Chinatown. You can see the beautiful gate there above. But so for the last about hour, there was a rally here against violence against Asian Americans and against China bashing in particular. But so what was kind of interesting about this demonstration, as opposed to other ones that have focused on the same subject here, is that this was explicitly tying together what they see as imperialism and capitalism with racism. In other words, they were arguing that America's foreign policy toward China foments hate and that encourages racism here. So I will have HD footage from this and the other demonstration that I filmed this morning out on News to Share later today. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Check out the News to Share Patreon. All of that good stuff.